Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a good night. I made the mistake of sleeping like 10 hours, so I went to sleep at like 1 o'clock earlier trying to take a little nap and woke up at like 11 o'clock. So, it's my night off. I suppose good to get some rest every once in a while. But the point is, I cut my hair today. I've been noticing some things in the media, and a couple of things I talk about is not killing people and trying to be peaceful and resolve things, but I seen a video in Minnesota today of ICE shooting another man, but the crazy part is the way they killed this dude was sick. Cause I don't know if they were hitting the dude in the top of the head with a thermos, like a coffee cup, or a pistol. But you could see one of the agents, it was like 10 agents around this dude. Could have been more. And one of them was pistol whipping this guy in the head. And then like all of a sudden, one of them shoot him on some super quick shit. Then like 2 or 3 more, or however many more, just start pow, 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 start blasting dude. Yo. You hear a lot of conspiracies about them talking about they're becoming a police nation and a police state, and authoritarianism and fascism. But I want to tell you guys something real quick. And when I say this, I'm not trying to do the whole white, black, Mexican, race, yellow, blah, blah, blah. If you guys watch enough of my videos, you'll see that I'm mixed with many things. And I'm basically like Napoleon ice cream. I have black or African. I have white or European. Actually, Eurasian, I guess you would call it. And I have Asiatic DNA. And so I'm mixed with everything. The funny part is my sister is a little darker than me, my older one. My other brothers and sisters are real light skinned. But my older sister's a little darker than me, and she's 19% Polish Russian. I'm a little bit more lighter than her, and I'm only 11% Polish Russian. But back to the point at hand, I think multiple people have been killed within ICE facilities, and people are being shot and killed now on the streets by ICE. That second shooting was brutal. That was hard to watch. But the reason why I'm conflicted when I see different influencers saying this is becoming a police state or a fascist state is because from an African American's perspective, or anybody if they can understand what's been happening to different people, is that this has been a fascist, a police, and an authoritarian country. You have to imagine for the indentured servants, the poor British and Irish that were sent here, and the Africans that were sent here, and the Native Americans that were colonized eventually, those people never had freedoms. Freedoms really were only for the wealthy back then. And then as time went on, they turned it into a racial construct. And so when I see the police doing these things and attacking people and killing them, I need people to understand that from my perspective, this has been happening. A lot of times people seem to remember pain, and a lot of rap music and blues and different music have been pain music, so to speak. People singing out, rapping out their oppression or their pain or what they've been going through. A lot of times poetry, music, different arts is a good way to express oneself and to balance that pain. And certain people like, I just watched, I believe it was a Stephen King movie that was, it's called, I think 11/22/63. And it's with James Franco, and he finds a time warp and he tries to stop the assassination of John F. Kennedy. It's a great movie. I really like James Franco because he did a couple things in that movie, but I like James Franco. I know he has some problem with sexual stuff going on, but that's another thing I want to talk about. What I notice in this country is that basically, as you start to do research, a lot of people do bad things, especially people at the top, higher ups. And a lot of people that are employed by these people and people within a network do bad things, even citizens and everyday citizens. You go to a person's house, a husband might be getting drunk, beating on his wife, or cheating on her, or doing drugs. Wife might be doing shady shit, stealing, or taking from the bank account, just all kind of things. Anybody's, but then what people will do is, after all this dirt, is they'll pick and choose and they'll find somebody and they're like, oh, they did that thing, and then they'll ridicule and ostracize them. And so, that's why I speak of forgiveness a lot of times, and I also speak of awareness, because just like that book causes people to be like, I could be forgiven over and over and over, so I can keep doing it, mercy. And that's not how it works. I was listening to Young Don earlier, and I like his view on Christianity now. We all had it. We've had our religious arc, our Christian arcs, but he telling the truth about Jesus and Christianity now is basically being used as white supremacy in groups and out groups. That's why whenever you see influencers like, I guess, Officer Tatum and these other guys now are saying, what about Jesus? What about the cross? What about... Yeah, I got a song for you. The same one that wear crosses are the ones that burn crosses. I think that's how the lyrics go. I ain't heard that song in a long time. But it's just all an image. But back to what I was talking about with authoritarianism and fascism. Even, so my great-grandfather, so how it works is my mother. I showed a picture of her and my grandma in a video called, It's Down Further, talking about bloodline heritages or something like this. When you see the title, you'll know what I mean. It's like a heritage of antiquity, or antiquity of heritage bloodlines or something like that. But and my grandmother basically looks white. Her father is Polish, Russian, or German, and her mother's African American, but she's light skinned. Well, they showed me a picture one time of my great grandfather's family over there. I guess his wife died, and many people had died already. So he fled to America and met an African American woman, and was astonished and loved African American women. So, plus when he came over here, as I told you all before, people weren't cool with Jews, and the Jewish people didn't have the type of power back then. They were like marching with MLK Jr. and stuff. So I don't know what's been going on. But if you look at the Japanese and the Chinese, they all had to go to camps and build stuff, and were basically indentured servants when building the railroads and different things. I think it was the Japanese that had to go to camps, and something happened to the Chinese. But it's racism and whatnot. But then you look out further. I look at Malcolm X, and it's like, okay, let's study about him. But then I learn about Islam and Arabia, and it's just the most sadistic, enslaving, murderous, Sharia-stricken, vile stuff I've ever seen. And people constantly, some people are good people. Of course, right. You got good people, right? But at the same time, a lot of people are following after a corrupt, sick religion, and they don't got no choice. Atheism, homosexuality, women not following the rules over there. If I think 4 men can truly testify that a woman committed adultery, they stone her and kill her. So, and people will watch me and be like, you don't know all of it, and you're just blah, blah. Whatever, dude. Y'all want this shit to remain like this forever? Go ahead. But what I'm telling you is, eventually there's going to be a portion of humanity that's going to find rest and peace and love, and they're going to overpower you ignorant motherfuckers. I'm telling you they are. What humanity is doing, they use some type of sonar, whatever, on these people, and these Venezuelans, when they kidnapped the president, it was mushing people insides, turning their brains into mush. High-powered sonar devices and all kind of crazy shit on helicopters. Just vile stuff to hurt other people instead of building. If a fraction of this stuff that was used to harm people was used to better humanity. But back to fascism. African Americans and different races of people have been trying to freedom fight and have been telling people. So then you got institutions all through. I saw this stuff happen all through the Trump years and many years before that. You're complaining blackies and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Racism ain't real and all this other stuff. And as they grow in power, the elites are going to use that same rhetoric and those same beliefs to then topple. I'm watching in Minnesota now, they got the fish police and the game police running through the streets beating people up because they're trying to protest. I mean, just tearing people up. All white people. ICE shooting and killing white people. I told y'all what happens to one eventually spreads to the rest, and what happens to minorities is going to happen to the majority. And even out of being the majority, I keep telling people these European countries are toppling. You guys should see what's happening in Britain and England. You guys see what's happening in France. And in America, you can see it happening in real time too. In France, they were throwing manure on government buildings. Farmers were. And so every time it seems like I look towards a faction or a group, so far it's like something negative or something bad. They're like, go back to your land and get your own culture. I go to learn about Africa and it's terrible. Then I look in America, we're FBAs, we're separate, we're a separate lineage. Everybody just always trying to separate. Everybody always trying to have their own little whatever, instead of us coming together and being humans and growing. But the way they killed that dude, and then I'm seeing in comments people like, I said earlier, I was like, white people are starting to sound like black people. They're like talking about oppression and how bad it is, and police shouldn't be able to do this and that and this and that and blah, this, that, and how corrupt it is and the justice system. And then you got these blackies cooning on podcasts talking about white supremacy. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not finna play all little games. I'm not. And so, from my perspective, there's always been fascism. When I go into a courtroom, you can't wear hats. I'm watching movies from like 100, 200 years ago. Not the movie isn't from that time. I'm saying they're portraying it, and then I'm studying on things, and they're using the same rituals in courtrooms that they did hundreds of years ago, step by step. It's like people are stuck in time. Even all this amazing technology we have, if different religious people and conservatives had their way, none of it would exist. Most of the red states are poor as shit, poor as dirt, and leeching from funding that's taken from blue states. But then you guys are saying give the states the power. What would those states do without federal funding but get crushed? And so it's I need people to understand that the more violence and the more vile and the more crooked it becomes. Oh, and then the portion of the other Caucasians or the other people, Europeans, that are mocking them when they're in the comments talking about this is so sad, this is that, and they're saying just sarcastic, crazy stuff. Like they should have obeyed, they shouldn't have been bothering law enforcement, they should have. That dude that got pistol whipped and then shot in the video I saw today, dude. That's crazy work. But that's why I tell African Americans, there's many people that see me, I'm telling y'all, or whoever see me, you don't gotta be African American, rest. Stay out the middle of that crap. They're gonna harm you, call you a terrorist, put you in the media and spin the narrative and make an ass of you. It ain't worth it. I'll never tell somebody not to fight for what they believe in, but I call this the age of intelligence, the age of science. Stop fighting in the streets and acting to know these people. African Americans have been doing this for a long time. You see within a fell swoop, they themselves removed it because they didn't think they were us. Then African Americans was cool, minding their business. We just, and then this is what caused me to actually even think about any of this. I saw in the comments of the fish and game police that was in Minnesota going around beating people up in the streets, and people just screaming, it's not right, it's not right. And one weird thing I noticed, nobody's actually, they're just all running at each other and dropping stuff and picking it up and tackling one person here and there and letting them go. It's like the weirdest thing I've ever seen. It's like NPCs. You know how imagine me as a black man and everything I know and see, and everything I know we did with civil rights and how we fought and changed everything exponentially within 50 years. It feels like, you know, those war games where the soldiers are at a war scene and they're shooting continue, and nobody actually dies, or if they die, it's a recorded scene in the background and they're all just fighting back and forth. And then as soon as you jump into the game and start doing stuff, everything moves along and the game starts campaigning. It's the weirdest shit I've ever seen in my life. But I will not bow, and I'm not jumping in the middle of these streets. Just like when Joshua told that prostitute rehab, whatever name, stay in the building until we're done. I have a plan. I am who I am, and I'm going to do what I do and carry it out. Everything I said about every single one of these influencers, these Nazis, and everybody else is coming true. And when the time is right, like Gideon's army, it will be. I'm only using biblical references because if I start speaking scientifically, people probably either won't watch me or won't understand what I'm saying, especially psychology. Because when it comes to psychology, they just want philosophy and self-help videos and the chosen ones, and they want to hear narcissists 18 times to make themselves feel better. So I use biblical references to try to keep people understanding to the best of their ability. Since everybody loves Big Daddy Kane so much. So I said in so many of my videos, if anybody's confused about religion or the Bible and that stuff, the 7 angels in the Revelation are the 7 commandments. They're 10, but let me explain. You have a covenant. You have the beginning of the Bible, there's 7 days. You have the middle of the Bible, or you have at the flood, there's 7 rainbow colors in the sky. Then you have at the end, the lamb and the 7 stars in his hand, right? But then in each one, you have the spirit that hovered above the waters, you have the ark, and then you have the lamb. The spirit, the ark, and the lamb are the first 3 commandments. I am who I am. I am sent me. I am the one who frees or binds whom I will. You shall have no gods before who I am. No idols in the earth, the sea, the heavens. Do not take who I am in vain, right? So then you have the other 7 commandments. What happened was they call it the Talmud and all these other books. This ain't an anti-Jew. Listen to what I'm telling y'all. You have all these, because it all comes from the Sinaiticus Codex. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the Catholics. There's nothing in biblical history before them. It was all destroyed by the Catholics and Arabs, I promise you. The Byzantine and the Caliphate. And the Romans and the Greeks before that. Not the Greeks, the Romans. But the Greeks were involved too. And so, what you're looking at it's all based around the 10 Commandments, that whole thing. Minus murder and all that other stuff. What they did was, in the wilderness, they turned it into 613. Plus that ark I was talking about of the spirit is the first 3. You have 616. That's the mark of the beast. If you go read those mitzvahs, it's full of murder. It's full of anti-civilization and stupidity. And then even the things that can be metaphorical, like don't cook a goat in its mother's milk. I'm not going to use Christianity to murder a Christian. I'm not going to use Islam to murder a Muslim. I'm not going to use Judaism to murder a Jew. So we debating and arguing, and I could use them scriptures to mindfuck them at every point. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to help them from a real world stance. So I won't boil a goat in the mother's milk. I won't use Christianity and Islam in the same motherfucking scriptures and mix it all together. I won't double stitch my leaves. But I could give you metaphors like that for days, but that's just who I am. Because the book says one thing and it takes me to give life to anything. And so the 7 angels in the Revelation, it's the commandments. It's metaphorical of how it's going to destroy the beast and everything else on the earth. And then when the angel with the vial, right? The other 3, the first. And then you have the beast, right? It has 7 heads and all that other junk. It's the 7 commandments they used to strike. What was the point in the New Testament? They was killing over them commands. They know the 613, which is the whole beast, but they don't make you memorize all those. A great rabbi knows as many as he can. Well, what ends up happening is they've been adding and adding and adding. Words of God's names, all this other stuff. Every religion has it. So I call it the wilderness law. I will destroy these people. Moses, no, let me do it, Lord God. So then you have the beast that comes out of the ground. To me personally, that's Christianity with its horns. Catholicism, Protestantism, and a mouth that speaks like the dragon, Sharia, and Islam. Vile. They're all liars. just like their father that created all this shit. Lying religious men. So it's all basically based upon a covenant of basically humanity. And in real time, they got that from the 42 laws of Mu'at. Mu'at gets her power from Atun, or the mound, the moon. Amun Ra, which is really a moon, the mound. And then Ra, the light, came over the hill, and it's the wind that gives Mu'at her wings so she can fly, just like Mentuhotep, the fiery falcon. All the 12 judges before Mu'at judges with her feather, and the crocodile comes and eats it. That's where Christianity gets all this shit. And Judaism, everybody, why you think Islam's all on them? The Hyksos invaded long ago, around Moses' time. They have written history about all this. There's a man named Ahmose, and his civilization was taken over by Asiatic shepherd kings. But when he was born 400 years after this happened, there was a great exodus and they were freed, and he kicked the Hyksos out. But then later down the line, people I call Aarons basically took Moses' name and created a whole bunch of laws. This was long before these Jews, or what they call themselves. This is a hate speech. So if I was y'all, I'd get out that book. Flee from her, my people. Because a man who was actually crucified, his name is John, Yehohanan. But nobody seems to want to listen. And they stole his lore. Judaism did it too. They call him Yochanan ben Zakkai. They call him Yehohanan ben Hagios, which is, I am the gracious son of the anointed one. Translated properly. And his son died too. They killed his son and stabbed his son while he was being crucified, and a bunch of his family and friends. But they won't teach you about that and put that all over the news. They'll sell you holy water from that, what's that dude's name? Kenneth Copeland, and that other lady who was selling the 1144 for your reservation spot in heaven, or $144 or 44 or 11 if you can't afford it. Fucking vile demons sending y'all into a whirlwind of stupidity. And I know people don't understand what I'm saying for some reason. There was a real man that was crucified in history around the time Nero and Nero's Herod was in Judea. 3,600 people were killed. They were trying to raid Yahweh's vault. They were trying to raid the temple of Jerusalem. A lot of these people were saying no. Well, what happened was, Nero was the emperor, but he committed suicide because he was violent and people was coming after him. He killed his own family. Well, then what happened was Vespasian was a great battle warlord or whatever. And when Yehohanan was killed, he predicted Vespasian would be the emperor. They call him Yochanan. Either a man named Yehohanan or Yochanan. Then what he did was he spared a bunch of the people from that temple the sages of Yahweh, and let them go move somewhere else. And the rest of the people was exiled and murdered and castrated. Babylon castrated and exiled and murdered men and enslaved them. Persia did. Persia was more like helped them, I guess, from my understanding. But then Greek invaded, which was more democratic. And then you had Rome, who was definitely castrating and enslaving people. That's why they switched it to the mother. Spreads the seed of Judaism. Because the Lord said, I will wipe these people off the face. This is y'all book. I will wipe these people off the face of the earth. I will end their remnant. I will crush and destroy my vine. Well, how do you get rid of a people through their own word, but then still have them here to be redeemed? By your words are you justified, and your words are you condemned. So all the men are castrated, enslaved, and taken out eventually through time, and the seed spread through the mother now. So they're still Jews, but not according to their written history where it says the man has to pass the seed. How simple is that? So they try to switch it up and be sneaky. And how y'all clean children up after circumcisions? How y'all talking about if a 2-year-old girl is penetrated and all this other stuff in your scriptures? It's showing how disgusting this whole religious stuff is. All these Catholic men coming out touching children. Islamists murdering people for gay, but in a dark suit on some gay stuff. Humanity. I'm telling y'all, there are gifts within who we are. You don't have to look at them as gifts. Look at it as nature. We are powerful. We are humanity. Help me help you. Then help you help me. Let's come together and walk above the sea. Man can't walk on top of water, literally, unless we invent something in the future. But we can swim. Hello, everybody. I don't want to just leave y'all hanging like that. I want to help edify a little bit better what I was talking about. So when I talk about different metaphors about sevens and tens and threes in the Bible, the reason why those three numbers are important and why you see them everywhere is because it's the total number is 10, and that number between itself becomes then 7 and 3. You'll notice one time Moses went to the rivers and he saw 3 women and 7 flocks. I think it was Job had 3 daughters and 7 sons or something like that. It's always that number, right? It's metaphors or poetry for the 10 Commandments. And what I'm talking about when you're dealing with the Revelation is you have the Lamb, and I call it the Ark, or what they will call, it's metaphorical. That's why I don't want to say Jesus or different names. I want you to understand what was inside of Jesus, what spirit was inside of him causing him to do all of this. A lot of times when I talk, people don't understand what I'm saying because they're looking for real. And what I'm doing is I'm navigating through reality. So let me explain real quick. A person has a belief system or whatever. But a lot of times what we fail to realize is that we are actually really analytical and computer-like. The brain is automatic with many different things. And nothing is truly random. I learned that when learning about Pokemon. When they set numbers to try to be random, but nothing's truly random. It's all based on a calculated system that seems random. And so the point is, the reason why I brought that up is when I talk about the Ark of the Covenant or the first 3, and I'll leave them in my description at the bottom of my videos, there's a scroll, and I'll leave that for a purpose. A lot of times we are bound in something or a contract or wording or whatever and don't realize it. Bruce Lee one time said, words are like spelling. They cast spells on you, sort of speak. And that's true to an extent. And so then back to the covenants and all this stuff. You have the first 3 commands. I call them the Ark of the Covenant, the spirit that hovers above the waters. Both of those things hover above something. Then you have the other 7 commandments are like lights. And when they shine down on the earth, they give light, but then there's different days. New things are created. Each one brings something new, so to speak. You got like, thou shalt not kill, right? Or murder. Now you're not murdering. So something on the earth changed. Thou shalt not steal. You're not stealing. So something on the earth changed. Thou shalt not covet for thy brother's house. So now you're not robbing people or murdering people or enslaving people, right? The whole earth is beginning to change, right? And it's like shooting fire or plaguing what one spirit once built on the earth. If you can understand this metaphor and follow along. So then, once the other 7 angels report back to the tabernacle, which would be the first 3 commands, right? The tabernacle is like the lamb or the spirit that hovers above the waters. What ends up happening is now who I am comes out, right, at the end and sets this shit off. If that makes sense. It's like the end of the Revelations when it says in the 7th, the Lord came down, blah, blah, blah. But that's all metaphorical. Don't look for what's real right now. Follow me in reality. And so then now you get the 10 commandments. But the problem is one of the most rebuked commandments, thou shalt not murder is one of the most rebuked, but you have one that says thou shalt not bear false witness. That is written for a reason. Right? Or, I'm sorry. Thou shalt not bear false witness. I believe it's against your neighbor or something like that, but it's thou shalt not bear false witness. And the reason why I say that is because what happens is when you're dealing with religion, this is a very fiery subject, especially because of what's been built so far. And when you tell people things that aren't true, and I tell people all the time, Truth is subjective until you make it objective. You can believe anything. It's with the person, I guess. But when people use different things for money, power, and other things that they want, maybe attention, whatever the reason, numbers, clicks, views. When you send people off like that, unaware there's a bunch of people out here in civilization that carry these things out and follow these things, making you a pastor of destruction if you're not careful. Now, if you're righteous in your way and you truly believe something that still cause calamity, hey, that's just the way the dice were rolled, I guess. We call that RNG, random number generator, although nothing's random. Who set these institutions up in the first place for this to happen? No, this isn't a Jew thing. Follow along. I'm telling you all, it's the Catholics and the Pope, but nobody listens. So, what is 613? You guys hear me using and referencing the Talmud a lot and the mitzvahs. The only reason I do that is because there are a lot of people that are bound by something right now. That are bound by a lot of those mitzvahs. Those 613 laws. You guys will wonder why I say plus the Ark of the Covenant and not the whole 10. Because if you read the mitzvahs, those other 7 are included in the 613. What they did was they tore apart the tablets and then started following the mitzvahs, the beast law. But it's all incumbent with the Ark of the Covenant. Who are they following? The spirit that what? Hovers, right? The Spirit of God. And everybody has the first 3 commandments. Don't take the name in vain, no idols, no blah, 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 no idols, no idols, no gods, and the name, and put nothing before who I am type stuff. So what ends up happening is, I don't know how many of you have ever read those, gone to the Old Testament and read that stuff, or read anything in the wilderness. But between Numbers, Deuteronomy, and all these other books, there is nothing but murder, vile, and terrible things. It is written before any of this happened that these people were going to be destroyed. And yet nobody's paying attention to this. Do you guys ever hear about when people be like, oh, when you say songs backwards or things backwards, satanic, blah, blah. Write down Jehovah and then write down Yahweh. Not with the W. There was no W's. With the V, the German high V, because we're not speaking Hebrew, we're speaking English, which is heavily redacted from German. And so it would be, and there was no J. But for purposes, just like Jehovah, you're going to write J-A-Y or J-A-H-V-E-H, Yahweh. Jehovah and Yahweh are the same words with the vowel switched and an O in the middle. What they did was they created a whole bunch of religion and a whole bunch of foolishness and a whole bunch of cosplay throughout this whole world. People were being conquered constantly, and these civilizations were basically... So I'm going to give you a piece of information. King David did exactly what the Babylonian king did. He took over a nation, usurped that motherfucker, and called it his own. So why is King David any different than Nebuchadnezzar? But people are not paying attention, and they let racism and these names and these whatever they're called, they're letting the names in these books mess with their heads and spread racism and elitism. So there's a lot of Bible metaphors I've been thinking about and recreating and teaching. And the reason I'm doing these things, especially when talking about hell, in a lot of videos I explain to people how not real hell is. But when I do that, what I'm doing is I'm taking these demons out of you all's heads and showing you where they actually come from. So when I say not real, all things that exist are. Harry Potter is a character, so it's real. I'm not saying the way you all fictitiously imagine it to be. But what I'm saying is learning to navigate through reality So what's real is not tortured. And so a good example of that is the word God is from Germanic paganism. Gudan, Gudis, Gud. You guys get the word Goth. The word Satan is a derivative of Sanatan Dharma, which is from more of a Hindu sect. The Hindus in the Indus Valley have been fighting with the Arabs for I don't know how long. So of course they have a shaitan. But the Arabs in their current stance didn't exist before the Pope. Muhammad was being influenced heavily by Christianity. There was no monotheism in the Middle East. And all of a sudden the Pope comes out. He freaking colonizes all these Vikings and Europeans. And now Muhammad appears out of nowhere, talking about one God. There was no Torah from before 1000 AD. I'm telling y'all there's not. Or else the Bible and written history is a lie. When I say things like the Lord proposed to wipe everything out and all this other stuff, I'm just using y'all own words to prove to y'all, because in written history it says they would castrate and enslave the males. Judah said that happened to them over and over and over. So then I'm telling y'all they change things to accommodate their lifelines when they need them to. And so I just try to expose a lot of this biblical hypocrisy and put back into you all's temple what Darius, Nebuchadnezzar, and all these other kings took out. Because when I say that, I'm simply saying a metaphor for when kings, great people, priests, people in power, write things down. We ingest it because a lot of times the first few generations are enslaved and forced to, and then it becomes just a common known belief. My parents were Christians. They taught me everything I know. My parents were Muslims. They taught me everything I know. Forgetting what your great-great-great-great-grandparents went through to have to learn that. Because even y'all Arabs, they had crusades for a reason. It was killing y'all ancestors to spread new truth. Just like how now, what are they doing to the Kurds? What are they doing to the Sudanese?